If this showed up for you, it's not a coincidence. The portal has already started to open. In alchemy, awakening isn't just some philosophical concept. It's a real process of transmutation. It's not something that happens outside of you, it happens inside. Just like the alchemist turns raw lead into gold, awakened consciousness starts to dissolve everything that's dense, conditioned, artificial. And this process doesn't start with some big explosion, it starts with a quiet calling. At first, it's just a weird feeling, a subtle shift. The world looks the same, but something about it doesn't fit anymore. What used to make sense now feels empty. The promises they made you, success, stability, recognition, start to feel like illusions. It's like the structure of reality itself is cracking, showing something hiding behind the surface. And that crack? It's not a mistake. It's a portal. Inner alchemy is the real great work. It's not just about turning metals into gold. It's about transmuting your own consciousness. When this process starts, the very first thing that gets burned in the alchemical fire is the illusion of normalcy. What you used to accept without questioning now feels weird, like a dream you just started waking up from. But the system wants you to stay asleep. It needs you to stay on autopilot, distracted, disconnected, consuming, with no time to realize there's something way bigger beyond this whole game. Because the moment you see the illusion, that's when it starts to fall apart. But that's only the beginning. There are still 8 more signs you need to know if you want to cross the portal of inner alchemy, and without them, you could get lost along the way. Stick around till the end, because each of these signs will completely change the way you see your reality. Second sign, realizing you are not your thoughts. The mind lies, it always has, but you never noticed. Since the day you were born, they taught you that your identity comes from what you think. They told you that you are your ideas, your beliefs, your story, your past. But what if all of that is just a program running in the background? What if the real you exists beyond that non-stop voice inside your head? That's the second sign of awakening, when you realize you are not your mind. Hermeticism has been saying this for thousands of years. The all is mind, but that doesn't mean you are that mind that never stops thinking. The all is cosmic intelligence, the matrix where everything comes from, the invisible substance connecting every being, every star, every atom. But inside that great universal mind, there's a smaller mind, your personal mind, fragmented and limited. And that's the one keeping you trapped. The personal mind doesn't create anything. It only repeats. Everything you think is yours. Your opinions, your fears, your desires is really just a reflection of everything you absorbed throughout your life. Inherited programming, beliefs passed down through generations, rules you never even questioned. What you call me might just be a mental construction, a character shaped by your environment, and you never even noticed. But one day, something shifts. A brief flash of clarity pops up in the middle of the non-stop stream of thoughts. You watch an idea pop into your head, and instead of identifying with it, something inside you just watches it happen. Like a whole new perspective just unlocked. Who's the one watching? Who's behind the thoughts? And then the answer hits like a shock. You are not the voice speaking inside your head. You are the one listening. In alchemy, this moment is called calcination. The fire of awakening starts burning away everything that's fake, everything you accepted without question, everything that doesn't belong to your true essence. The ego fights back. It scrambles to hold on to control. It tries to reinforce old patterns, to make you believe you still need them. But the illusion has already been exposed, and once you see the illusion, it starts to crumble. This process isn't instant. The mental program will still try to run on autopilot, throwing out thoughts the way it always has. But now, something's different. You know, your mind isn't your master anymore. Thoughts come and go, but there's something beyond them, something you can't name, but you can feel. Something that's always been there, just waiting for you to notice. That's the second sign. The moment you stop being a slave to your own mind. The moment you start seeing reality with eyes untouched by conditioning. From here on, transformation becomes inevitable. The mind will try to pull you back in, but now you know it was never in control. You are the one waking up, The mind is just the echo. Third sign, realizing the outer reality reflects your inner universe. And then it hits you. Everything you experience, every moment, every encounter, every challenge, none of it is random. But not because there's some rigid destiny or an outside force pulling the strings of your life. The reason is something else, way deeper and way more unsettling. Reality isn't something that happens to you, it happens through you. That's the third sign of awakening. The moment you realize that the world around you is nothing but a mirror reflecting what's inside of you. Hermeticism has always taught this. The phrase, as above, so below, as within, so without, is a universal law. What you feel, believe, and vibrate internally shows up in your external world. There's no escaping it. The universe is always responding to your frequency. But this realization doesn't hit right away. Before this moment, you believed life was just a string of random events where luck, or lack of it, called the shots. If something went wrong, it was the circumstances, the people, or fate to blame. If things didn't go your way, all you could do was complain or feel like life was unfair. But now, something shifted. You start noticing patterns. The same situations keep repeating themselves, like they're trying to teach you something. The same challenges show up again. The same kinds of people cross your path. The same inner feelings keep creating the same outer results. Like an invisible loop running on repeat until you finally wake up and see it. And once you see it, there's no going back. There's an old story that explains this perfectly. There was a temple hidden deep in the mountains, known only to those who were truly seeking knowledge. Inside that temple was a unique room called the Hall of 1,000 Mirrors. They said anyone who entered would discover the truth about themselves. One day, a lonely traveler arrived at the temple, tired and bitter from life's hardships. His heart was heavy with resentment and frustration. When he walked into the hall, he looked around and saw himself reflected 1,000 times, every image exactly like the next. But what he saw terrified him. 1,000 angry faces, all scowling back at him with cold, harsh eyes. A chill ran down his spine. He ran out of the temple, convinced the place was cursed. A few days later, another traveler reached the temple, but this man was different. His heart was light, and his mind was open. He had learned to find beauty in life's simplest moments. When he stepped into the hall, he was greeted by 1,000 radiant faces, all smiling back at him. He felt warmth and joy surrounding him, like the room itself was embracing him. He left the temple with a deep sense of peace, like he had just uncovered some ancient secret. The temple was never magical. It only reflected what each traveler carried inside, and that's exactly how life works. Every situation, every person, every challenge you meet is a reflection of what's vibrating inside you. If there's fear inside, the world looks hostile. If there's distrust, people seem threatening. If there's a belief in lack, life constantly proves to you that there's never enough. But if there's peace, life feels lighter. If there's gratitude, doors open. If there's trust, life flows. That's the third sign. The moment the line between inside and outside starts to disappear, you realize nothing is random. The universe is just mirroring back what you're putting out. And with that realization, the matrix starts losing its grip, because now you know you don't have to be a victim of circumstances anymore. You can change, but not out there. The real shift happens inside. Everything else follows. Fourth sign, shifting your focus from lack to inner abundance. If the outer reality is just a reflection of what's happening inside, then why does scarcity still run so much of life? Why does it always feel like something's missing? Not enough time, not enough money, not enough love, not enough purpose. That emptiness feels endless, like nothing will ever be enough. But what used to feel like a condition forced on you by the world now shows itself for what it really is. A mental program, a lie that's been passed down for centuries and accepted without question. This is the fourth sign of awakening. The moment scarcity stops looking like some fixed reality and starts being seen for what it actually is, an internal frequency. The world around you isn't denying you anything. It's just responding to what you're vibrating inside. If you believe in lack, everything will shape itself to confirm that belief. But once your consciousness expands, that whole logic flips upside down. That's where the real alchemy begins. In the process of the great work, there's a stage called conjunction, the moment your soul and mind finally start aligning to a new perspective. Up until then, there's been this invisible conflict. You wanted abundance, but deep down, you were sabotaged by old beliefs rooted in limitation. The mind kept saying you had to hustle and fight for everything, that prosperity was a privilege for the lucky few, that struggle and suffering were just the cost of being alive. But that was just another illusion fed by the system. True abundance doesn't start with what you have. It starts with what you feel, because what you feel is what creates your reality. But the mind, conditioned by fear and scarcity, resists this truth. It clings to the idea that you have to see abundance first before you can feel it. But that order is completely backwards. That's not how the universe works. When you shift your inner frequency, everything around you responds. Not because it's some kind of magic trick, but because that's literally how reality is built. Everything vibrates, and life reflects whatever you're putting out. If you see the world through the lens of scarcity, you'll move through a field full of limits. But if you learn to tap into abundance within, you start to notice that opportunities, connections, and resources show up in ways you never expected. Not because they magically appeared. They were always there. They were just out of reach, blocked by the narrow filter of scarcity. This is the point where your mind and soul finally start to merge, the first real act of practical magic. There's no need to go looking for anything out there. It's already here, waiting for you to tune into the right frequency. From this point forward, scarcity stops being an inevitable fate and becomes just an unconscious choice. A choice you can finally outgrow. Fifth sign, you stop blaming others and realize you create your own reality. And when that inner sense of scarcity starts to dissolve, a whole new realization kicks in. If the outer reality is just a reflection of what's inside, and if abundance starts within you first, then who's really in control? Who's actually calling the shots? This is the fifth sign of awakening, the end of victimhood. The moment your awareness expands enough to see that nothing happens by accident, there's no one out there to blame, and there's no invisible force out to get you. Reality doesn't punish or reward, it just reflects. Just like an alchemist works the elements inside the furnace, you realize you've been shaping your own life this whole time, even if you didn't know it. Matter responds to consciousness. There's no fixed fate, no sentence handed down by some external power. Everything is movement, everything is vibration, and everything can be transmuted. But for that shift to happen, you have to drop one of the biggest lies the material world ever sold you. The idea that you're a victim of circumstance. For a long time, that lie was useful. It gave you something to blame for your failures, a place to throw your frustrations, a reason to stay comfortable. If everything is always someone else's fault, then you never have to take responsibility. But holding on to that belief comes at a cost. It strips you of your creative power. It turns your entire existence into one long reaction instead of a conscious choice. And this is where real fermentation begins. In alchemy, this is the phase where something new is born. An old state of mind dissolves, so a new one can take its place. The ego resists. It scrambles to find new excuses, tries to cling to that old victim role. But it's too late. You already saw the truth. This transition isn't comfortable. Taking responsibility for your life means owning every choice you've made so far. Realizing that every single experience came from your internal state at the time. That might feel heavy at first, but pretty quickly you realize this is the most freeing thing ever. Because if it's all created from within, then everything can be changed. The world stops being the enemy. Challenges stop feeling like punishments. Life isn't happening to anyone. It's just responding. Once this sinks in, transformation speeds up fast. The awakened alchemist doesn't sit around waiting for the world to change so they can change. They know the order is reversed. The shift starts inside, and once that happens, the outer world has no choice but to follow. Sixth sign. The search for presence becomes a priority because presence is where transmutation happens. And when the power comes back into your hands, something crucial becomes crystal clear. The past is already gone. The future doesn't exist yet. So where does life actually happen? Where can transformation really take place? This is the sixth sign of awakening, full presence. That moment when you finally get that all the magic, all the alchemy, all the real change can only happen right now. The future is nothing but a projection of the mind, the past just a memory file. Neither of them actually exists, but the mind, after years of conditioning, keeps bouncing back and forth between these two poles, trapping your awareness in a timeline that's never the present moment. In Hermeticism, the present moment is called the narrow gate. That's because the mind is constantly trying to escape it. Behind you, there's the story. Regrets, excuses, explanations. Ahead of you, there's worry, expectations, fear. But what if there was a space where all of that went quiet? A point where the spirit could actually act without interference, without noise, without the weight of what already happened or what might come next. That point is now, and this is where real transmutation goes down. The Athanor, the alchemist's furnace, isn't some physical place. It's the present moment itself. This is where the lead of your conditioned identity gets turned into the gold of awakened consciousness. But for that to happen, the mind has to be pulled back into the only time that's actually real. The mind fears the present because the present doesn't give it anything to hold on to. No past to explain, no future to predict. There's only what is. And that state, raw being with no filters or illusions, is the ultimate challenge for a world that's spent its whole life running from itself. But when that running stops, something wild happens. Anxiety loses its grip, because anxiety can only exist when the mind projects into a future that's not even real. Suffering starts to fade, because pain only drags on when it's carried out of the past and into the present. Clarity gets sharper, because confusion only lives where there's scattered thoughts and too many timelines to juggle. Being present doesn't just mean paying attention. It means stepping out of your mind entirely, letting awareness take the wheel, and feeling reality directly, no filters. It's noticing each breath as a portal, each sensation as a connection point to existence, each instant as a field of infinite possibilities. This is the sixth sign, when presence stops being something you practice once in a while and becomes your top priority. When you finally get that there's no enlightenment waiting for you in the future, no freedom hiding in the past. There's only now, and this is where the real magic happens. Seventh sign, your challenges turn into alchemical opportunities. Being present doesn't just mean living in the now. It also means accepting everything the now brings, and that includes the challenges. This is the seventh sign of awakening, when struggles stop looking like enemies and start being understood as agents of transformation. Before this point, obstacles felt like punishments, injustices, outside forces trying to block your path, but now your whole perspective shifts. Pain isn't punishment, suffering isn't some kind of mistake. Challenges are the fire of alchemy. This stage is known as distillation. This is where raw material starts to refine. Nothing transforms without heat. Nothing evolves without friction. Just like the alchemist puts raw metals through fire to extract their purest essence, consciousness has to go through the flames of experience to be polished. For the longest time, fear of suffering made you avoid pain at all costs. But avoiding the fire only keeps you stuck in your raw state. Every deep transformation needs some kind of internal combustion, where the old breaks down to make space for the new. Every crisis, every loss, every tough situation shows up like an essential ingredient in this invisible lab called life. It's not about chasing suffering. It's about understanding it. Realizing that every challenge holds the key to your next level. What feels heavy today might actually be the raw material for your awakening. Shadow only exists because there's light. Destruction only happens because something new needs to be built. And every real growth journey follows the same law. There's no expansion without overcoming. The deeper the fire, the purer the gold. Once you really get that, resistance starts to fade. The challenges don't disappear, but they stop feeling like enemies. The fight against reality ends, And what used to be a roadblock now becomes part of the process. This is the moment when consciousness really starts to break free. Because without fear of pain, without resisting the fire, transformation speeds up. The world stops being a battlefield and becomes a living lab where every experience, no matter how intense, is just another step toward building your own philosopher's stone. 8th sign. You step away from overstimulation and start seeking your own sacred space. And when challenges stop being obstacles and start being understood as agents of transformation, something inevitable happens. The need to step back and retreat starts to feel stronger and stronger. Not because you're running away, not because you're tired, but because something inside you needs space to reorganize itself. This is the 8th sign of awakening. Conscious isolation. That moment when solitude doesn't feel like loneliness anymore. It feels like a calling. Just like the alchemist needs the silence of the lab for transmutation to happen, the person going through transformation feels a deep need to step away from overstimulation. There's no more interest in the same shallow conversations, the constant distractions, the non-stop noise of the outer world. The energy you used to spend trying to engage with everything and everyone now needs to be directed inward. This is the nigredo phase in the alchemical journey, the stage where the old social identity starts to dissolve, the moment when everything you've built up until now starts to lose meaning. Old friendships drift apart. Certain places start to feel foreign. The same habits that used to bring you pleasure now feel empty. It's like a whole chapter has closed, and the truth is, it has. But this isolation isn't an ending. It's a cocoon, a sacred space where the new consciousness can be born without interference. The outer world still exists, but now you have sharper discernment about what's worth absorbing and what isn't. There's no more need to please, to fit in, to blend into the mold. The focus shifts inward, toward quietly rebuilding the version of you that's about to emerge. Solitude becomes your ally. In silence, the answers show up. In stillness, your perception expands. This isn't the isolation of pain or rejection, it's the isolation of healing. Connecting with your own essence becomes the top priority, and from that space, the transformation goes deeper than ever before. This is the 8th sign, saying goodbye to the old version of yourself. Stepping back on purpose so something new can be built. A necessary pause before the final rebirth. 9th sign. The world turns symbolic and starts speaking directly to you. And then, in the silence of isolation, something starts to happen. Little signs pop up all around you, like the universe itself is trying to talk to you. At first, they just seem like random coincidences. A number that keeps showing up everywhere, a song playing at the exact moment a certain thought crosses your mind, a random encounter that somehow gives you exactly the answer you were looking for. This is the 9th sign of awakening, synchronicities. That moment when reality starts lining up so perfectly that the whole idea of coincidence falls apart. These aren't just random events, they're answers. They're confirmation that you crossed an invisible line, that your frequency shifted, and that now there's a real dialogue happening between you and the world. Mind and matter aren't two separate things. The universe doesn't just watch, it responds. Every thought, every intention, every vibe you send out into that invisible field comes back to you somehow. Before this point, life felt like it was just unfolding on its own, with no connection to your inner world. But now, that illusion of separation crumbles. The world reveals itself as one big living symbol, a constantly moving mirror reflecting your internal state. What used to go unnoticed now stands out. A repeating number might be a call to pay attention. A random phrase might hold the key to an inner dilemma. An unexpected event might push you exactly where your soul needs to go next. The wall between the seen and the unseen starts to collapse. Rigid logic doesn't explain everything anymore. The veil gets thinner. This is the first glimpse of coagulation, the phase where spirit and matter line up, and life, which used to feel scattered, suddenly starts organizing itself with precision. Like you're learning a whole new language. Not a language of words, but one made of symbols, patterns, and vibrations. And then the inevitable question shows up. Now that you've seen all 9 signs, what comes next? That answer isn't written in any book. There's no map for this territory. Just a choice. This is the portal to inner alchemy, a point of no return. A calling that only a few ever hear, and even fewer have the courage to answer. This isn't a physical doorway. It's a vibrational shift, a passage from the old, limited identity into a whole new way of existing. It's the entrance to the great work, the alchemical journey where everything heavy turns to light, everything in shadow dissolves, everything unconscious becomes clear. This portal is known as the Sun Door, the gateway to awakened consciousness, where there's no longer separation between matter and spirit, between inside and outside, a path where you stop looking for answers out there, because you understand they were inside all along, but you can't half cross this doorway. Either you walk through it completely, or you turn back. Because once the illusion falls apart, there's no way to unsee it. Once the portal opens, you can't go back to sleep. Awakening isn't an idea or a belief, it's a point of no return. If these signs showed up for you, know this: it's not random. They're an invitation, not a gift, not a privilege, a calling. And a calling demands action. The great alchemists and mystics throughout history were driven by this same force. They refused to live under the veil of unconsciousness. They couldn't settle for just existing. They chose to cross. They chose to become the agents of their own transmutation. Now the portal is right in front of you. Only one question remains. Will you cross? And now that you know the 9 signs of awakening, the journey doesn't stop here. There's a special video waiting for you, diving even deeper into this path of inner alchemy and showing you how to apply it to your own life. Don't leave yet. Click the video showing up on your screen right now and I'll meet you there. And if you want to support this work and help the channel keep bringing transformational content, your support makes all the difference. You'll find the link to contribute in the pinned comment. Thank you for being part of this journey. I'll see you in the next video.